Major Lindsey and Africa presents Bouncing Back, conversations about resilience for lawyers.
Welcome to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. This podcast is brought to you by Major Lindsey and Africa, the global leader in legal search and consulting. I'm your host, Rebecca Glatzer. I'm a managing director in the Associate Practice Group at Major Lindsey and Africa. In this podcast, you'll hear me speak to successful professionals about the hiccups, bumps, bruises, and setbacks they've experienced in their careers and personal lives. And you'll learn how they ultimately bounced back from those experiences to thrive. Today, my guest is Salomon Laguerre, Corporate Counsel, Employment Law at the Home Depot, the largest home improvement retailer in the United States. Prior to joining the Home Depot, Salomon practiced employment law at Baker Hostetler and Seyfarth Shaw. He is a graduate of the Florida State University College of Law, where he's an adjunct professor, and Salomon sits on the boards of the Georgia Haitian American Chamber of Commerce and the Haiti Education and Resource Team. Salomon, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you, Rebecca, for having me.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned to me before, we had a prior conversation where you said the LSAT was a bit of a hurdle for you in getting into law school. You took the LSAT in anticipation of going to law school, but didn't do very well the first time. What happened?
Yeah, and so, one of the things for me as someone who whose English is his second language, I was never good at any kind of standardized testing or any kind of testing. And so going into the LSAT, someone with my background where, you're going in with having heard people telling you, getting into a good law school is probably a long shot, and to have a plan B, because of that background. And so I went in, I did all the preparation. I took the prep course. And I studied hard. I studied very hard, and I prepared for a long time. And it's funny, people don't know this. Many people don't know this story. I think people who've known me for the past maybe 5, 6, 7 years think that I've always had it together, and that I've kind of cruised through my educational and professional life, and that hasn't always been the case. And so I took the LSAT, and I went home after I took the test for the holidays, and I think the results came back. It was maybe a few days before Christmas. I don't recall exactly, but it was sometime in December during the holidays. I remember being home in South Florida at my parents' house, and the test results came back, and I completely just bombed it. The score was pretty bad, and at that moment, I was completely just devastated, really. And I remember getting in my car immediately after, and I was attending college in Tampa at the time at USF. And I told my parents and my siblings that I'm going back to Tampa. I'm hitting the books again just because I completely bombed that test. It wasn't one of my best moments.
Yeah, no, totally. So you're home from college. You had taken this exam that you had hoped would pave the way to going to law school, and you're home with your mom and dad for Christmas. And you have 3 other siblings. Is that correct?
I have 3 siblings, correct.
Yeah, so you're there with the siblings, you get the scores, and you just leave. You're like, I can't stand being here. I need to go be myself and sort of figure out what I'm gonna do next. Which leads me to, the language barrier obviously wasn't going to go away. What's your native tongue is French or Haitian Creole or both?
So both. I speak fluent in Haitian Creole. Used to be fluent in French, not so much anymore, but I speak both Creole and French, yes.
Gotcha. Yes. So, that's obviously not going to change, right, Salomon, between the first taking of the exam and the second. I'm curious, kind of what was going through your mind and what you did, to sort of triumph the second time, because you obviously did. You got into a great law school and you became a practicing lawyer. So what was sort of going through your mind, and what did you do differently, when you took it the second time?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things is, as I'm in the car, I'm driving back to Tampa, the doubt does start creeping back into your mind because, again, you've heard, people tell you that, look, you moved here at 12 years old. You really didn't become fluent in English that long ago. Getting into a good law school is not going to be easy. And so that doubt does start creeping back into your mind as if, am I really cut out for this? Because I prepared a lot and I studied a lot. But again, I think what gave me confidence that I was going to do better the second time is because of the preparation I know that I put in that last time around and the amount of studying that I did. And so I drove back to Tampa, as I stated, it was the holidays, got back on campus. There really was no one else on campus. I remember just finding one of the buildings that was open at the time, and I just kind of set up shop right there and just went back through the material, went back to practicing again, went back to studying again. And I think, the next time the test was going to be administered was February. So I had a couple months to, refresh and get ready and prepare again. And I was, believe it or not, as bad as I did that first time around, I was still confident because I know I put in the work. And I don't know what happened the first time, but I knew the second time that I was going to do much better. And ultimately, I did, and the rest is history.
Yeah, no, that's great. The rest is history, and you did well the second time and were able to get into a good law school. Wanted to go back to something that we sort of alluded to, but not sort of, kind of spent a lot of detail on. So you immigrated to the U.S. from Haiti with your mom and your siblings at the age of 12. Would you tell our listening audience, about that experience and kind of how everything went down with regard to, your father coming here first, followed by your mom and you and your siblings?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad, Haiti, when I was, I'd say probably 2 years old. And like a lot of Haitians at the time, Haitian males, he got on a boat and made his way over to the Bahamas in search of, a better life for his family. At the time, it was my older brother was a couple years older than me. And my mom was probably either pregnant with my younger sister at the time, or she had just given birth to my younger sister. So just to kind of think about, the desperation that people, go through at times when, you're looking at a wife with babies and you not quite sure how you're going to feed them and take care of them, and you have to get on the boat to go to another country to at least have the opportunity to do that. Imagine the sacrifice of leaving a wife with 3 babies and then head to a different land. What pushes someone to do something like that, right?
Right. Imagine what the alternative was for staying. If you're going to risk it in that way, and was your dad by himself, or was it him and a few other people?
It was him and some others. Typically, there's someone who arranges those trips, and once they get a group of people who you pay some kind of money, and they arrange a trip, and there's a group of them that make the voyage from Haiti over to the Bahamas. Yeah. And my dad did, and I think he maybe spent a couple of years over there, came back to Haiti because things didn't work out in the Bahamas. And not soon after he got back to Haiti, he got on another boat. This time, he made his way over to South Florida in Miami. And, he got here to the States and, worked all kinds of odd jobs, dishwasher. At the time, my dad, he was undocumented, so he didn't have his papers yet. So a lot of times he was, being paid under the table, so to say, right?
Yes.
And just work all kinds of odd jobs that you can think of to send money, back home to Haiti. And ultimately, my dad worked his way up to becoming a U.S. citizen. And when he became a U.S. citizen, he applied for myself and my mother and my siblings to come over here and join them in the States. And that happened in September of 1997.
Wow. So how many years, give or take, between, there was this period of time where your dad was in Bahamas trying to make it, he wasn't able to kind of make the money and make it work the way that he wanted to. So that was a period of time. And then he comes back and sort of almost turnarounds and leaves almost immediately to go to South Florida. Do you recall how long he was apart from you and your siblings and your mom, that when he came to the U.S. and was working on getting U.S. citizenship?
Yeah, I would say about a good decade, right?
Wow.
And
wow.
I think a few, before he became a citizen, he had received amnesty and was, in fact, and became documented. And so at that point, he was able to come back and visit before he applied to bring the rest of us over. And so a couple of, I would say a few years before all of us ended up moving from Haiti here to the States, at that point, my dad was able to kind of go back and forth and visit a couple of times a year. But in total, overall, it was about a good decade where, my mom was living separate from my dad and the rest of us were living separate from my dad.
Gotcha. Living separate from your dad in Haiti, which is not a quick trip back to the U.S., and also raising 4 kids on her own while your dad is attempting to establish citizenship. Do you remember, what the conversation was like when you were 12 and, it's like time to go, like time to pick up and move to another country? Do you remember what that experience was like?
Yeah, I do recall the experience. So we were, when we reached the point where we knew it was going to be time to kind of pack up and go, that we had about, I would say, a few months of lead time where I knew there were some final steps in the process before we were able to, board a plane and move here to the States. And I grew up on the northern side of Haiti, in a city called Port-au-Paix on the northern side of the northwest side of the island. And so, to fly out of Haiti at the time, we had to fly out of the capital, Port-au-Prince, to come here to the States. So we actually, a few months before we ultimately boarded a plane to come to the States, all of us drove from Port-au-Paix and stayed in Port-au-Prince. So I had some family living there at the time where we basically lived with her for maybe 3 months as we waited for the final steps of the process.
Yes.
And I just recall just the anticipation of, the day finally going to come, and are we really about to leave Haiti and, the rest of our family behind? And so it was kind of exciting and bittersweet moment, but really we're just looking forward to finally moving here, being with my dad, and then kind of starting over and starting a new life.
Gotcha. So would you say it was like more excitement and less sadness at that point? You're leaving family members, you're leaving friends that you probably grew up with and that sort of thing, but it was more of like excited anticipation to be reunited with your father?
Definitely more excitement, right? We know that the opportunities here were endless, and I grew up in Haiti, seeing cousins, uncles, aunts who are older than me, and they've sacrificed to get through school, and still nothing comes of it because there are no jobs, and they're still kind of relying on other people who live abroad to send them a few dollars every month just so they can survive, right? And so I witnessed the poverty and stuff like that, and so it was really just exciting to be able to finally go somewhere where, in a sad way, you're leaving home, but you're going somewhere where you hear about how endless the opportunities are, and that fresh start to be able to, take advantage of those things that are offered here. And so, yeah, so we're really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you guys get to South Florida, reunited with your dad, but English is not the first language, and I'm sure there's some cultural shock probably. Do you remember, kind of what that was like in terms of, the language? I mean, you're 12, you're not 3 learning English for the first time, right? Or, getting better with English. I was curious how that experience was for you with the language barrier and sort of the kind of cultural differences coming to the U.S. as, a young child.
The truth is, it was brutal.
Brutal.
It was brutal. There were a lot of things that, as a child, I was not expecting when I moved here, and when we got here, obviously, we didn't live in the best part of town, in the best neighborhood. And so we kind of had that to deal with. Also, I didn't speak English, right? None of my siblings spoke English. And so now you're going to school where now you're, interacting with all these kids who speak English, who are from here, and at the time you dress a little different because you just here from Haiti, so you still you're not accustomed to kids American fashion, right? Stuff like that.
Right.
And so and you come here and you're just different, right? You're different from the Caucasian kids. You're different from the black kids. You're different you're just different, right? And you speak different. You sound funny as you try to kind of assimilate. And I came here. I started school in the 6th grade, and kids in middle school, they can be cruel,
right? Yeah, I know. That the hormones are raging, and they're trying to sort of deflect from themselves. So bullying is at its high peak in middle school. Middle school is terrible in that regard. Yeah, exactly. And
absolutely.
Here you just arrive, and it's I can pick on these kids because they're different from the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was a lot of bullying, and there was a lot of fighting. As a kid, I was one who who always would stand up for myself and my siblings. And so I mean, middle school was not a great experience. It was tough. No. It was a lot of bullying, a lot of fighting every day. But through it all, thank God for a few teachers who recognized in me that there was something there, more than just that weird kid who doesn't speak English.
Right.
And my mom always, even though she was alone raising us in Haiti, she did not mess around when it came to education. And so she instilled that foundation in us early. And so even when we came here, despite the fact that, we couldn't speak English, I was able to showcase to my teachers when it came to math, numbers are numbers, numbers are universal, right? I was able to show them, look, this kid actually is kind of smart. And so they saw that in me early, and they took an interest in me, and and they made sure that I made it out of middle school in good shape. And, you know, when I messed around, when I got in trouble, they took me home, made sure my dad knew, and they just made sure I did what I was supposed to do, to make it out of there. But it was a tough 3 years for sure, I would say.
Yeah, I bet. But you had this, like, it sounds like you had this, like, wonderful teacher, parent community that, you know, saw promise in you and kind of galvanized to make sure that you kept moving in the right direction. You have said before in our previous conversations that, one of the things that perhaps, went through your mind a couple of times, perhaps in college when the LSAT didn't go well, and, at various times, perhaps during law school and subsequently, that when there was a setback of some sort, something that didn't go your way, a hiccup, that the thought kind of went through your mind, like, it's going to be okay because I'm really not even supposed to be here right now. I'm not supposed to be in the U.S. We, had some good luck and some good fortune and landed here. And, I've come so far. I'm paraphrasing your words here, Salomon. And therefore, if I quit now, I've already sort of succeeded. Not that I'm going to, but like, anything on top of, getting through, going to college, graduating to college is kind of a cherry on the top, if you will, because, this was not supposed to happen in the first place. I'm paraphrasing your words, but interested, in how that line of thinking has impacted you, kind of going forward, because, going to law school and finishing law school and taking the bar and then becoming a practicing attorney, none of these are easy things. And I was wondering if you could kind of, shed some light on your worldview based on everything that you've experienced and how that's like impacted your practice of being a lawyer.
Yeah, I approach setbacks, I guess with a different perspective, setbacks or hardships, however you want to call it. So I almost didn't even go to college, right? Because I grew up kind of in an environment where it wasn't my parents' fault. It's just that, as immigrants, they just really had no knowledge of kind of what the education system is like here, how it functions, higher education, how do you prepare to go there? How do you guide your kids through all the things they need to do? I mean, they just didn't know. And so I didn't have that any of that guidance. And so my GPA in high school was always good. I always did, well in school, but frankly, college was always an afterthought. It was just never something that you say, most kids, once they reach high school, 10th grade, they're getting ready to go to college. That was never me. It was frankly a last minute thing where I think I was a senior in high school and I went to a college fair by chance, and I saw the schools. A lot of them I was learning about for the first time, and I applied to one school and got in, and that's kind of how I ended up in college.
Right. That'll do. That'll work. Yeah.
Right. And
go ahead.
Yeah, and so it things like not doing well on a test, not doing well on the LSAT. To me, those are like first world problems. I call them
first world problems, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was going to say we've talked about this before, which is why I know this. But for the listening audiences or listening to the podcast, Salomon has told me, neither one of his parents went to college. I think you told me that they have, the equivalent of like a sixth grade education. So it like wasn't this idea of, oh yes, Salomon and his siblings are going to go to college. Like that wasn't on either one of your parents' radar screen. It was about kind of seeing an example and falling into a career fair that was like, oh, is a possibility. You know, no one sort of had made you aware that this is something that like you could do. And it just, you know, to me sort of speaks to, one, that was a beautiful chance happening that you went to that career fair and got into the, you know, the school that was nearby, the local, very good school that was nearby. But also just like this idea of, oh yeah, everybody goes to college. That is a very like first world American line of thought, you know, that opportunity does not exist in certain places. And I think it's important to kind of like verbally underline that. We take certain things for granted, and, you know, certainly this country is not perfect, but we don't necessarily question certain givens, like, oh, you can go to college, you're going to go to college, right? Like that's an opportunity that's available for everyone. So that's an interesting point that you make. You know, you've also said that in our prior conversations that, you know, seeing both your dad and your mom and how they handled their circumstances before you came to the U.S. was sort of pivotal in shaping your worldview. You know, I sort of think about your dad and the scariness of getting on a boat with potentially a bunch of strangers and going across the sea and having the weight of, oh, I need to make some money because I got to get my family out of this situation. But you've told me some things about your mom and how, you know, she influenced you as well, her example. Could you tell us a little bit about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you know, the reason why I'm not really fazed by much, you know, I've been blessed enough to frankly have had a great, you know, legal career so far. I've had, you know, practicing law is challenging. You know, I've spent my fair share of time at two major law firms, you know, billing hours and you know, at the few times or the moments where I find myself stressed, and I'm always, you know, reminded of like, Salomon, you've seen what real actual stress looks like, right? And I you know, as I said, like, you know, leaving your wife and 3 babies to get on a boat to go to another country just so you can, you know, make sure that they're able to eat. That's stress, right?
That's right. So there's food on the table and being responsible for that. That's stress. You're right. You're right.
That's stress. And my mom, you know, being left in Haiti and having to make sure that, you know, 4 kids, you know, are surviving or staying out of trouble or staying out of the streets or, you know, having food, you know, on the table for them, making sure that they're going to school. My mom, I'd call, you know, I like to use the term hustler. She was a hustler, right? And she did not sit. She did not sit on, you know, on a chair waiting, you know, on a money transfer for my dad every month. She went out and just started doing what she needed to do to make sure that, you know, her kids survived. And if that meant that she had to go get on a bus and travel from the northern side of the island to Port-au-Prince every month to buy stuff to come back and sell at the local market so we can have clothes, so we can have food, etc., that's what she did. And so, you know, seeing them, my work ethic, I get from them. And that's, you know, that's why I've never been, you know, sitting in a big law office billing, you know, I don't know, $200 a month. To me, like that's not stress. That's a privilege in a way, right? I mean, I know it sounds weird to say, but you know, if you've seen real struggle, like you don't that's nothing to complain about. And so my worldview is really shaped by that upbringing and just kind of seeing the sacrifices that my parents have had to make and the real struggle that they've gone through to allow me to be where I'm at right now. And so it's been, I'm blessed. And so, you know, all the little hiccups and setbacks and situations, to me, I don't see them as I don't know, as setbacks. I'm just blessed to be where I am at this point, at this moment. And that's just kind of how I view life.
Yeah, definitely. It's all in how you view the stress, and there's like a perspective I think that you have that's valuable, you know, especially for folks that are dealing with some unusual things in 2020, you know, the last obviously year, and this will continue into the next few years, have been really sort of traumatic for some people. And, you know, I think you have this advantage, this like perspective of, you know, seeing how the other half lives, so to speak, you know, knowing what it's like to live in two very economically distinct countries, if you will. And given that, you know, I speak to young lawyers all the time, and, you know, one thing that I sort of, you know, hear and have heard a lot over the past year, let's say 12 months or so, is, you know, a great deal of upset about, you know, being furloughed, laid off, facing pay cuts, uncertainty about, you know, their careers and their personal lives. And, you know, a lot of them, especially if they're on the junior side, if they're millennial or Gen Zers, they're too young to really have been impacted by the Great Recession back in, you know, 2008, 2009, 2010. And many of them don't have a point of reference. You know, this is you know, for what they're experiencing, this is the first time as sort of like type A, you know, kind of gunners. They're used to, you know, they were the valedictorian of their high school and their college, and they did well in law school, and everything's been very smooth, you know, with very few hiccups until now. And I was wondering, you know, what advice you would give, Salomon, to those folks who are listening, who are going through, you know, some difficult times, perhaps for the first time in their lives.
Yeah, no, we're going through some tough times indeed. You know, you have to be resilient, and you know, I think that comes obviously with having dealt with, you know, past hardships. But it really, you need that to be able to withstand the tough times, and also to maintain hope. And you referenced, you know, the Great Recession back in, you know, 2008. I remember being in law school at the time, and a lot of my friends who were senior to me were getting offers pulled, and people were getting laid off, junior lawyers at law firms. And you just have to maintain that mindset that it's going to get better, because it will. It will. Times will get better, and the opportunities will come back. And in the midst of it, the important thing, I think, too, is you have to maintain a community. You can't do it alone. Law is not a profession that you can go by doing alone. And I don't think any profession you can go by doing alone. I think you need to maintain a network, a support system, people who you can reach out to and just talk, right? And just talk. And those people are probably people with, you know, past similar experiences who probably are able to offer you guidance, and who maybe are able to connect you with people who can ultimately give you, you know, an opportunity. Maintaining a community is important, because you need a support system. I mean, you shouldn't have to do it alone. You need a support system, and just stay resilient, because I do think times will get better.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. You know, a network serves all types of purposes. I think, as you pointed out, Salomon, it's a place of support. It's a place for networking and finding other opportunities. It's a place to get advice from people who have gone before you and maybe have experienced some things that you haven't, and helps you get some perspective. So I think that's a wonderful piece of advice. Well, I just want to thank you so much for, one, giving me your time today, sharing your experiences with our listeners. I know that they will get a lot out of your story. I know that I have myself, Salomon, and I just want to thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Again, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Bouncing Back, Resilience for Lawyers. Join us next time for another story about thriving after overcoming challenges. You can find Bouncing Back and other programming for lawyers on MLA's Legal Talk Network.